God bless. Thanks again, John.
Right. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Okay, everyone. We're moving right along. Appreciate that. Mike Montagne is in the wings, founder of People for Mathematically Perfected Economy. He's been on before. In fact, the last time, or originally when he was on, he had the entire 3 hours of our call for what was an amazing night, as we all remember back in late May. And one of Mike's colleagues has uploaded those segments to YouTube, and if you go to YouTube and just type in American Underground Network, you'll see the 17 segments of that conversation, that presentation on our call. Appreciate that very much. So, hey, Mike, thanks for coming on. I kind of laid the groundwork before you came on at the beginning of the call by telling folks about the Bill Still presentation he was on, and the fact that Steve Zerlenga's been on this before, and that at some point I would certainly look forward to the possibility, the potential for a true open airing and a dialogue of the real money issue to be brought out. You know, you could take the gloves off and just have at it in a very respectful, positive forum. So this money issue is really coming to the forefront. People are occupying the streets of major cities and towns all across the world. They may not know why, but the powers that be could be in some way, shape, or form supporting these people to do that, maybe to take the focus off of what they should be focused on. But years ago, you dug into this issue, you analyzed it, and provided a ton of research that was first put on the early portions of the internet, and other people have plagiarized your work and kind of went off on it. And, you know, I know you've said this before, but Bill Still, he is running for president like John DeMay, and, you know, you just can't get enough of the potential for people to air and share facts and figures and historical documentation. So if you could just kind of, without Bill Still being on the call, Mike, take us to how you would throw the shot across the bow for Bill Still to try to hit or dodge.
Well, first of all, I'll say good evening again, and thanks for having me on, Fred.
Yep.
The first shot across the bow is, well, I haven't, studied up for this at all, but first shot across the bow is the last I, saw anything of Bill Still's. He was claiming 100% reserves would somehow solve our issues, and that can be disproven readily, and in fact, it would have some very adverse consequences. So that would be the shot across the bow. I would ask Bill how he would, what is his present theory of solution, if any, and how he could prove that it would accomplish the whatever objects he might claim. And likewise, I would expect the same question of myself. And then I would say, well, we would each should have ample opportunity to disprove each other's claims. So that would be, I think, likewise, it's a vital discussion. It's these presidential debates we're seeing are preposterous. We have nothing but, excuse my language, incompetent fools pretending that, they can be some kind of cheerleader or something that's, going to reverse a process which is indigenous to the present obfuscation of the currency, which, as I explained in our previous program, it results in inevitable monetary failure. I provided the Reagan administration with computer models which actually calculate the maximum possible lifespan of any purported economy based on interest-bearing debt by no more than maintaining a vital circulation. And those models in 83 and 4 projected that the present failure would transpire at approximately 2010 AD.
Now, Mike, fast forward to Bill Still a few weeks ago when he was on the call. He basically said, he did qualify and admit, listen, I'm not the expert here. There are other people whose work I am drawing upon, and he cited a couple of different individuals, and I think in emails after that, I got more of that in my hands. But what he basically said to me, as simple as I could describe it or understand it, is that you stop issuing, take the power away from the Fed to issue Federal Reserve notes and replace that with the issuance of Treasury notes. That will, when these Treasury bonds come due, pay them off with Treasury notes, fresh out of the Treasury directly from the government itself. Now, that's as simple as I could kind of nail it down.
Well, that's preposterous because
that would be kind of, if Bill were to take the first step, that would be his volley back to you. Now throw it back here.
Well, that's preposterous because the promissory notes upon which our circulation is rightly issued are the promissory obligations of the people. All of our problems are a consequence of an obfuscation of those promissory obligations under which the Federal Reserve falsified an obligation to pay and to retire principal from circulation into a falsified debt to itself. It gives up no lawful consideration. So there is no debt to the Federal Reserve. The obligation remains an obligation to pay and retire principal from circulation, and that can be fixed by obfuscating the notes into Treasury notes.
Okay, so you're basically what you're responding back to Bill is that you can't replace an obfuscation with an obfuscation.
Exactly, and the other side of that is that you fix the obfuscation by rescinding it, which is to restore the promissory obligations of the people to obligations to pay and to retire principal from circulation, which I'm sure Bill knows what my solution has been all this time. Why he's running for president.
And as best as I can simply describe what you have presented to us on the call, to kind of sum it up in a very, very, shallow way, is that you basically circle the wagons around interest as being the virus, the debilitating, fraudulent piece that because you mathematically cannot pay off the interest, and we all know that, this system of charging interest is the debilitating final, the final fatal flaw of the current structure. Okay?
Interest is part of the obfuscation. There's two parts of the obfuscation. Okay. The first is that our obligations to pay and to retire principal from circulation are obfuscated into falsified debts to the so-called banking system. The second is that without any lawful consideration, and therefore without even any property at stake, the central banking system imposes interest. Most people are under the wrong impression that we borrow money from banks. All that the banking system does is publish further representations of our own promissory obligations, which, since the real creditor is paid in full from the outset of every such arrangement, that is, whoever provides a $100,000 home is paid in full with a representation of our promissory obligation. Thus, the remaining obligation is for the obligor to pay and to retire principal from circulation. There is no debt to the banking system because the banking system merely absorbs the negligible costs of publishing further representations of our promissory obligations. But so
now the example, I think that was the example you originally raised, which is the example of a $100,000 house, which when you were to bring it into the marketplace in a transactional sense for sale or purchase would bring that as new currency into the system, backed by the value of the house for its 100-year value. For example, 100 years at 100,000 would roughly equate to what, $60 a month or something like that, as you said?
$83.33 a month, yes.
Okay.
Under mathematically perfected economy. So the solution is to count all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, which itself resolves most of the world's debt. And then
wow. So on the conversion to this,
in the conversion to mathematically perfected economy, most of the world
debt
is
all former payments of interest toward principal. Wow.
Right.
Well, that's sounds
Here's
like
what happened when you
people
bought that $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan under the central banking system. The banking system spent about $2 to publish $100,000 of representations of our promissory obligation. So for $2, they pretended to loan us $100,000, which never existed, which exists actually as a further representation of our promissory obligation. Now, in the course of paying for that $100,000 home, let's just use some round figures, which let's just say we pay $400,000 of interest toward it, which we're going to pay more than that over time as this house is resold and refinanced again and again and again. But let's just say we paid $400,000 in interest, so we're paying $500,000 for a $100,000 home to a purported banking system which spent $2 to issue the evidence of our promissory obligation. You see?
Jesus Christ.
So
God.
what's the solution is to take the criminal out of the equation, which imposed itself upon the United States by falsifications which claimed it would solve all the problems. In fact, it can only cause. Herbert Hoover, his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination in 1911 or 12 rather, claimed that we were within sight of the day when poverty would be banished from the earth. In 15 years, the Federal Reserve System caused the first Great Depression of the world. So what we're doing, we're a little bit smarter, hopefully, 100 years later, is my work reevaluates the nature of promissory obligations and the legal stature of a bank to claim that debts exist to it for merely absorbing the costs of publishing further representations of our promissory obligations, and it resolves that into the only solution, which is to count all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, which, in the case of most of the foreclosure in the world, for example, being as the disparity of payments is about $1,000 a month under the present system as opposed to $1,000 a year under mathematically perfected economy for the same house. So the disparity is basically 12 to 1, which holds generally across the economies of the world. And therefore, everyone who's in foreclosure right now is instead 12 times ahead of their payments. For example, a person that might be paying on a home for 10 years and has fallen 6 months in arrears under this transition to mathematically perfected economy would be 120 years into their payments, or the house would be the debt would be resolved. So instead of being in foreclosure, just by transforming their debts to what they would have existed as under mathematically perfected economy, not only resolves their foreclosure situation, but grants them their property free and clear, as it should be, because they paid for it already several times over, likely.
Mike? Hello?
You're breaking up there a little bit.
Mike?
Yeah. I'm here. Are you there?
No, yeah. I'm going to have to switch rooms, Mike, because my family's going to bed.
Okay.
So keep talking. And
Okay.
maybe,
Well, so
you can spin a few plates for me.
all right.
Yeah.
I'll basically give the whole picture over again. Mathematically perfected economy.